Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. My name is Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Welcome to another edition of Understanding Black History. Brothers and sisters, our focus and topic today is Shirley Chisholm, the one and only. I say, all hail the Queen, Shirley Chisholm. Brothers and sisters, before we get started, I want to give a shout out, a heartfelt shout out to brother. We laid to rest today, brother James Green out of Masjid Warfdi Muhammad in Houston, 3rd Ward. A dedicated servant to the community. He and his wife, may Allah bless them. They will meet in the afterlife in paradise together. A good man. Just want to shout him out, and also want to give a shout out again to Imam Asam Abdul Rashid Mir in Philadelphia, who was laid to rest on Tuesday. Every once in a while, you try to find the words or the phrasing to describe somebody who's more than just a person, they're an event. If you're lucky in your life, you'll get to see somebody who's actually an event, that their presence evokes a sense of gravitas in history. Maybe it was watching Hank Aaron hit, beat Babe Ruth's record, or Michael Jordan hit winning shots, or Barack Obama, that somehow help us transcend everything around us. The negative things that we say, this will never change, these type of people and events change. Shirley Chisholm was that person. I don't know if my mom's watching, but I'm just going to say it. The second woman I ever got into a fight over was Shirley Chisholm. The first was my mom. The reason I got into a fight over this woman was, it was 1972. And she had declared herself a nominee for the presidency of the United States. She was trying to be the Democratic candidate for the presidency of the United States. And there was just such a wellspring, brothers and sisters, because at this point in time, we would say there's never going to be a black person meeting a black man who will ever be president. And here she was, stepping out, on faith, walking a tightrope as a woman, as a black woman, who was, in some regards, people say a political newbie, but that's because they didn't understand her politics. They didn't understand how she got from point A to point B. I want to say the intellectual foundation that was laid for her, not only by her parents, but the whole process of being an American woman, an African American woman, trying to navigate the process. See, back in the 60s and 70s, she tells some interesting stories about the parties that used to have democracy or democratic clubs. And, in New York and Brooklyn, she would spend time talking to these people, but they didn't talk about her. They talked around her. They talked over her. And one amazing story, she talks about how the big bosses wanted all the women to go out and raise money, but they never gave them seed money to do so. These women were expected to go into their own pockets, their families' pockets, and give it to these politicians to help them win. And she said, no, I want to win. We're going to talk about that today here on the Shout Out Show. And I want you guys to know that before there was an Ilhan Omar and an AOC and a Kamala Harris, there was this woman who was a very single entity that did something that had never been done before. The first black congressman, the first black candidate for the United States of America. But, brothers and sisters, she was a visionary. And some years later, we celebrate, and because, we like to think the old things are new, and we like to think that the old things are something we discovered before. No, she was a stalwart. I'm going to be talking about her day in depth. So I want everybody to please tune in. Understanding our Black history, Shirley Chisholm starts now.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh. And we're back talking about one of my heroes, Sister Shirley Chisholm, better known as Shirley Anita St. Hill Chisholm. Originally, she was born, of course, in the United States, but her roots, brothers and sisters, are from the Barbados. She was fond of saying, I am a Barbadian American. And on that island, brothers and sisters, where her parents sent her to be with her grandmom, she learned the efficacy of reading, of asking important questions, but also investigating the world around her. These things would carry over when she came back to New York. She was an excellent student, excellent scholar. Many of you guys know she was offered to go to Vassar College as well as Oberlin, but she chose Brooklyn College and a local New York college because she didn't have the money to do so. She acquired education, a master's in child care, and she did daycare, and then she moved into the political space. Now, to move into the political space, brothers and sisters, has a lot to do with how we look at politics right now. I told you guys at the beginning of the show, one of my big fights I ever had over a woman was over Sister Shirley Chisholm. And the reason I had a fight about Shirley Chisholm is because a student, a white young man, thought it was funny to say that Shirley Chisholm looked like a monkey. And we took offense to that. And I tried to be diplomatic, and I said, take it back. He said, no. I said, take these. That's the way it goes sometimes, when you're young. You're not working out. But I realize now why I fought and why I punched this guy and why some of the other brothers joined in. Because he wasn't just talking about Shirley Chisholm. He was talking about black women. And that whole thing of Shirley Chisholm looked like a monkey or an ape, it just tied in the fact that, black women didn't have the functionality, the sophistication, the nuance that we watched as young black kids every day. We watch our mothers and our aunts and our grandmothers work out life every day, knowing that you have to deal with the white man when you go out of the door, but you got to deal with the oppression of men, period. And that's black men too. You see, that was the thing that Shirley Chisholm did for me. And I'm going to bring out people in on the chat. Of course, I got to bring in my shout-out show family. But let me say this about Shirley Chisholm and what she did for me when I was very, very young. Shirley Chisholm was the first politician, hear me now, the first politician that made me see life as not for whites only. Let me say that again. She made me see life, or helped me see life, that life was not for whites only. Political power was not for whites only. Homes were not for whites only. Education was not for whites only. See, because you're talking about the 60s and the 70s, while we were getting this liberation, there were all kind of doors being slammed in our face. And she one-ups the system. And when I say one-ups the system, she one-up white supremacy, she also one-up patriarchy, she one-up what the BS that black men do. She one-upped it all and said, I'm going to be this congresswoman and I'm not going to wait my turn. You don't wait your turn behind people who ain't going to do nothing. And I have taken that to heart into my old age at 55. I still remember that like it was yesterday. And that's what we were fighting for. That's the feeling that gave us, in some regards, liberation, in some regards, rage, but it gave us hope. Let's get into our comment section real quick before we get into our subject matter. Who we got in the box today? We got Sister E saying, hello, family. Wow, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister E, thank you so much for joining the show. You know we appreciate you. Shout-outs to Derek. Shout-outs to Juwan. Two hard-working men taking care of their queen. All right. Nice to see you on the set. Next up, We got Altaf Rashid all the way from Toronto. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Altaf, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. A Canadian ambassador, man. Hey, Altaf, if you get a chance, man, I want you to look up Sister Shirley Chisholm, really Dr. Shirley Chisholm. But I'm being technical. Dr. Shirley Chisholm, please look her up, man. But she is a wonderkind, brother. She is a wealth of information and just a lot of inspiration for what we do. All right, next up. We got my little brother, Johnny L. Thomas, better known as JT to me. What's going on? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Man, always welcome on the platform. My home is your home, brother. And I know I owe you a call, so I'm going to make sure we handle that this weekend, inshallah. Love and blessings to you and your family, the babies, and the boys. Tell them to call their uncle sometime. You know, they got to check on their uncle every once in a while. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Next up. Sister Ika tuning in all the way from Depok, Indonesia. I know she's up early on the games. Nice to see you on the set. Sister Ika, we hope that you are doing well and you are off to an amazing day. It's already Thursday over in Depok. So have a blessed time, and thank you so much for joining us on the platform. We know it takes a lot for you to get here, so we appreciate you. Next up, my sister Jamaica, Sister Misa, Sister Fields. One of my favorite sisters. How you doing, beloved? Good to see you on the show. Shout outs to you and your family. Let me give you proper salams. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey, I hope you're doing well. You know I keep you in my du'as. Give a shout out and hugs to all those babies you got. I don't mean all the babies, but all the babies. Not like you got a lot, but just the babies. You know, just tell them, hey, salams. All right. Nice. That came out really, really wrong, so forgive me. Bilal Salahuddin, what's going on, beloved? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Sister Sonia. Man, thank you so much for joining the platform. Sister Sonia should be here today. We're talking about Shirley Chisholm. Telling she missed this one, but it's okay. It's all right. I'm not going to hold it against her, because sometimes we get wrapped up like that. Like that, maybe a little bit like that. That's all. I'm just messing with you, man. But thank you so much for joining the show. All right. What's going on? What you say now? Imam Ayman from Crenshaw. That's right. He had his janazah. His janazah was today, I believe. It's either, I saw a post about it. Yeah, Imam Ayman. Old school. I mean, foundational old school out in Los Angeles, out in Crenshaw area. Wow. That's a lot of history. I got to make that call too, man. Just giants. We are dealing with the lost giants here in terms of our imams and some of our religious leadership. So keep all of them in your du'as, please. And we got Sister Satana. What's going on, Sister Satana? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Who's making the show better and better and better. Okay. So this topic is Sister Shirley Chisholm. Now, I'm going to say a few things. So just give me a little space to work here. Shirley Chisholm becomes a congressman conquering male chauvinism from African American men. She wins her seat as a congresswoman, beating James Farmer, who was a stalwart in the civil rights movement. And the way she beats Mr. Farmer is that Mr. Farmer keeps telling everybody in the campaign, you don't want this little skinny, weak little woman. You want this skinny, little, weak little woman. He's got all the guys, and they were going around her campaigns, and they would bang big drums and pretty rude stuff. Nothing crazy, but pretty rude. But they underestimate that Shirley Chisholm is a strategic thinker. What they did with her, they wouldn't have done against a white candidate. They did it with her because she was a black woman, and they thought she was weak. But what they didn't know about Shirley Chisholm was that she was a strategic thinker. And upon this assault of her intelligence and her integrity, she went to the voter rolls and found out that a large portion of her district were women, black women, and Latino women. And guess what she studied in school and had her minor in? Spanish. And so when she went to her borough to talk, she talked to the women, she talked to the Spanish women, and guess what? She trounced James Farmer. Now, if you get a chance, look up James Farmer. You go, this is a substantial dude. Yep, he's a substantial dude. That lost to Shirley Chisholm because she was already outthinking the competition, already outthinking the opposition. She was already outthinking people. I mean, she did things back then they haven't been able to do before. If you think about it, at the time of her death, it's a plethora of time and candidates that we run through. Jesse Jackson, we had Barack, we had all these people. She's the first woman to declare to be, not vice president, hear me now, not vice president, president. Sorry, Hillary Clinton. Sorry, all these other folks. She was the first one. And she did it back in the 70s. Which means she had to figure out fundraising, which means she had to figure out coalitions, which means she had to figure out delegates. You know, this part of it, brothers and sisters, is the thing that gets me inspired. Because I always say, the most dangerous woman in the world is a woman that knows what she wants. And I don't hold that back. And I always say that's the most inspired woman in the world, the woman that knows what she wants. She's not dangerous to you or her, or to herself, but she's dangerous to people who underestimate her. And so I love this whole thing. And she had a term, unbought and unbossed. She would refer to herself as unbought and unbossed. And she went, brothers and sisters, she went against a lot of things that were not in the best interest of course, her people. So we're going to be right back. We're going to run this pretty quickly. Can you run the trailer, that clip, please?
Americans all over are demanding a new sensibility, a new philosophy of government from Washington. Instead of sending spies to snoop on participants at Earth Day, I would welcome the efforts of concerned citizens of all ages to stop the abuse of our environment. Instead of watching a football game on television while young people beg for the attention of their president concerning our actions abroad, I would encourage them to speak out, organize for peaceful change, and vote in November. Instead of blocking efforts to control the huge amounts of money given political candidates by the rich and the powerful, I would provide certain limits on such amounts and encourage all the people of this nation to contribute small sums to the candidates of their choice. Instead of calculating the political costs of this or that policy and of weighing favors of this or that group, depending on whether that group voted for me in 1968, I would remind all Americans at this hour of the words of Abraham Lincoln, "A house divided cannot stand."
All right, we'll be right back after these messages. Shirley Chisholm in the house. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear "Don't Get the COVID."
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, we're back talking about, of course, the Queen, Shirley Chisholm. You know, a lot of times in political process, brothers and sisters, we're not really privy to understand the idea or the conceptual idea of a first. She was the first. In one of her interviews, she talked about the first time she went down into the congressional dining room that they have at the bottom of the Congress, and she talked about how no woman would sit with her. And one day she sat down at a table, and she didn't know that all of the tables were assigned to delegates. So there'd be a New York table, there'd be a Minnesota table. Well, this particular time she sat down at the Georgia table. And the person from Georgia came over and demanded that she leave the table. And she refused and demanded that she leave the table. And she said it came to a head a little bit. And then she leaned in with the motherly space. And she said, I think you're just hungry more than you're angry. And the guy looked at her and goes, well, what does that mean? She goes, look, I'm not going to leave this table, but you go over there and sit at that table. And if anybody gives you a problem, you send them over to Congressman Shirley Chisholm. Later on in life, brothers and sisters, she did something that was really, really interesting. And that was she stayed in the public eye. But not just the public eye. It was to continue building trailblazers. I mean, by the time she passed away, may Allah be pleased with her, she had over 40 honorary doctorate degrees. She was a great speaker. But she framed things like the Congressional Black Caucus and things like that for people to have access to political power, but also to have finance to do it. So we have a little thing we're going to show here, and it's just a little breakdown, but I want everybody to understand just how special this woman was. I've talked about some of the nuance. We're going to give you just a basic primer about Shirley Chisholm. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Before Auntie Maxine, before Barack, and before Kamala Harris, there was Shirley Chisholm.
I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America.
Shirley Anita St. Hill Chisholm was a Brooklyn native with West Indian roots. She attended Brooklyn College and Columbia University, where she earned a master's degree in elementary education. First a teacher, then a daycare center director, Chisholm decided to take a crack at public service and served 2 terms in the New York State legislature. She made history in 1968 when she became the first Black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress representing the 12th Congressional District of Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy, stand up! Chisholm was also a founding member of both the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Women's Caucus. But Our Lady had her sights set on the highest office in the country. In January 1972, Shirley Chisholm announced her run for presidency and would become the first African-American woman from any major party to do so.
I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman, and I'm equally proud of that. I am the candidate of the people of America.
She ran during a crazy time in American history. Malcolm X, MLK, and Bobby Kennedy had all been assassinated. The civil rights movement had technically ended, but it's not like Black and brown folks weren't still fighting for equality. And Shirley Chisholm was like, I'm here for it.
The United States Constitution stipulates that anyone that is 35 years of age or over and is a natural-born citizen can run for the presidency. All of us meet that criteria, the people will make a decision.
This woman was out here snatching wigs and toupees before we even had a name for it. And she had to be tough because it was dangerous on the campaign trail. During the 72 campaign, fellow Democratic presidential candidate George Wallace was shot 5 times and left paralyzed from the waist down. Chisholm was also a target. She was attacked 3 times physically over the course of her presidential campaign, and once by a person carrying a 10-inch knife. Speaking of being stabbed in the back, feminists and Black members of Congress were split over Chisholm. The idea of having a Black woman president in 1972 was just too much for them and voters. So after fighting the good fight, and with 152 delegates at the Democratic National Convention, she lost the nomination to George McGovern, who would go on to lose to Richard Nixon. And we all know how that ended.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Chisholm passed away in 2005, but her legacy lives on. In 2014, she was honored with a Forever Stamp, and in 2015, Chisholm posthumously became the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
When asked how she'd like to be remembered, she had an answer. I'd like them to say that Shirley Chisholm had guts. And I'm proud to say it. Shirley Chisholm had guts.
It was a revolutionary act for a black woman from Brooklyn to run for president in 1972. A fearless, outspoken catalyst of change, Chisholm was unbought and unbossed. Shirley Chisholm, we salute you.
What's up? I'm PJ with the Root.
All right. Further evidence that we had somebody that walked this earth that really, really understood that. And I want to throw this out, that one piece I don't want to be overlooked, that even African Americans were not sure about Shirley Chisholm. It was the same thing with Barack Obama when we ran for president, we were unsure. But even with Shirley Chisholm, women were not sure about Shirley Chisholm, black women were not sure about Shirley Chisholm, black men were not comfortable with Shirley Chisholm in many regards, and white men wanted nothing to do with Shirley Chisholm. Now, as we get into the midterm elections, brothers and sisters, I want you to remember this show. Earmark it, if you will. And when you look at candidates, benchmark them on the greatness that came before them. It becomes too easy to have oohs and ahs about people who aren't doing anything other than telling you short little sound bites that you see on social media and Facebook and things like that. She was about the work. And I would encourage us, brothers and sisters, in non-voting years, to be about the work. The thing that they can't really say and they can't really show, because it would be a whole nother show, is what she did with the community. Even though she was in Congress in Washington, D.C., she would still come back to serve her constituency. And the idea of having a big picture, an extremely big picture about who she was in the scope of American politics, that she was going to serve everybody, even the ones who despised her. That is essentially the marvel and the genius of somebody who understands politics. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, brothers and sisters. I hope you enjoyed this show on Sister Shirley Chisholm. Shout out Sister Jamisa. I know I got your name wrong. It happens sometimes, so forgive your brother. Don't be mad. But I just want to make sure everybody got something out of this, if you will. Hey, what's going on? My main man, Ahmed, all the way from Houston, Texas, Matchit Worth Dean. What's going on, beloved? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shout out to you and your family. So let's go ahead and roll it. We want to give a shout out, of course, to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You can go to www.BeFinanciallyIndependent.com, or you can call 202-508-3780. 202-508-3780. All right. If you're interested in getting a quality graduate level education, Islamically, go to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School, located in Claremont, California, turning out people with masters in things of Islamic leadership, Islamic studies, Islamic education, and of course their world-famous program, one of the best, that is a Master's of Divinity with a focus in Muslim chaplaincy. They're doing big things. We're going to be talking about them too. They're going to be one of our guests during Ramadan. I might even bring them on now because I want people to really take advantage of this program if they can. So big shout out to them. And also our newest family member, we want to give a shout out to Us Hub TV. Again, that's Us Hub TV, brothers and sisters. They are growing. I had a great call with them today, doing amazing things. I am a part of their team in some regards. We're working on some projects. But what I like today is that people understanding that here in the space of Muslim streaming, Muslim excellence, you have some people that got it right. All right. So make sure you check out ushub.tv. And our last person, of course, is Convenient Urgent Care. With 3 locations in Pasadena, Cypress, and Houston. You can go to www.convenienturgent.com. Again, that's www.convenienturgent.com. shoutout.com. That's our show for today. Thank you very much. Shout out Shirley Chisholm. See you tomorrow, inshallah. I'm out. Well, family, that's it for our show today. One of the reasons I felt compelled to make this video, because I noticed when an event is over, Muslims don't know when to leave. So if you're sitting there in front of your television going, that was fun, that was enjoyable, what do I do now? This is me telling you to leave. You know why? Because the show is over. I already left. I taped this before I made it. So you have permission to leave. And you also have permission to come back. To the Shout Out Show, we are Monday through Thursday. Again, that's 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Central, and of course on the West Coast, 3 o'clock. So we want to thank you for coming on the show, my brothers and sisters. And guess what? This is yet another exercise for you to leave, because I'm out of here. Later.